Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to preview all of the round 22 action for the men, as well as, I believe it's round 5 in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership and round 2 of the NRLW. A lot of asynchronous football going on right there, 60s. But you're joining me to preview 5 games this week, as well as talk about some unfortunate news for the Parramatta Eels. We'll get to that very shortly, but as always, first let's do a check-in. How you doing, mate? It is cold and it is blustery this week, and it's just gotten worse and worse, it feels like.
Mate, it's look, I guess maybe the weather matches the mood for Eels supporters. I don't know.
Yep.
Look, people have sent me lots of messages. I guess like a check-in. The bottom line is, like I think I've moved past being emotional about what's transpired this year, because I think you and I have long come to the acceptance that there's going to be more pain for the Eels, and maybe acceptance is the wrong word. We're facing it front on, that it's happening. We're not accepting it, but we know that there's probably going to be more pain before we can start to see things turning around. It's there are complexities that are involved in the entire thing. We know that fans are hurting. We know that fans are reacting. We feel the brunt of that at the Cumberland Throw because of how in-depth we try to be with our coverage of all things Parramatta Eels. It's not easy creating content in times like this. I mean, well, it could be. I mean, if we just wanted to go and stick the boot in and just fly off the handle, it's probably easy content to make. In fact, you can imagine the clickbait that you could create. Well, it's not even clickbait. I mean, you just have to put up something every day about what's going wrong, and you get site visits, you get comments, you get, but we try to approach things with being as analytical as possible and trying to present as many facts as possible. But we also have to keep covering the football that's coming out there. Hence, today's a preview podcast, but we're also adding in our comments about what's happened with Blaize, because as usual, we record our news podcast on a Tuesday night, and then Wednesday morning, something drops. We do have to comment on what's happened. So I guess before we launch into that, thanks to our sponsor, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. It's a tough season to be sponsors of a site that is Parramatta Eels website.
Affiliated, exactly. The on and off field product from the Eels has certainly been subpar, I suppose, is the nicest way of putting it. And Star Partners sticking with us through thick and thin. We obviously had some great times from 2019 to 2022 as a club, and doing a little bit leaner now, but Greg and the crew are fantastic partners for us, aren't they, 60s?
Oh, yeah, look, absolutely. Look, I guess just to kick things off, John, I'm sure that the Eels as an organisation are having to put their hand up and say things aren't working. Because there is no way that you can look at what's been transpiring to lose some of the best talent that's come through pathways in some time, and say you can't have that and say, look, yeah, everything's going well, everything's exactly as we planned, because you can guarantee that the plan was not to lose Ethan Sanders, Matthew Arthur, and now Blaize Talagi. Right. So if you've got a plan that those sorts of players are part of your future, and they're part of a winning SG ball team last season, and then 12 months later, those three key players depart against what the planning would have been, then there has to be a look in the mirror as to how has this happened. Now, let's go over a couple of facts. All three are managed by different agents. All three would have different circumstances for their departure. But again, it comes down to how plans aren't successful. And I've said before that the club needs to look at some of the processes that are there for how we do things, and something isn't working, and it's a matter of addressing it, because if you don't address it, it's things can't be fixed. Now, people will have noted that I wrote specifically about my concerns around a player agent having significant numbers of clients. And let me emphasise that word, significant numbers of clients in Eels pathways. And I think they've interpreted that as me deflecting from the club as to why we lose Blaize Talagi. I'm not pointing at that at why we lose Blaize Talagi. There's a lot of things that the Eels have to work on as an organisation. When I wrote that yesterday, it's just, this is looking something that I believe they have to address as a matter of urgency, looking at the future. Because if you think that any club wants to have any agent controlling a large number of pathways players and thinking that that works for the club, then you're not really thinking through all of the possibilities and all of the issues that can create. And I don't want to say anything more on that, because I think I've said more than enough. But for anyone that's thinking that that is my only take about the loss of Blaize Talagi, I just wanted to emphasise this is something that I've been talking with the club about since last year. And
yeah, it's not purely reactive from losing a star junior.
No. And I haven't been writing on the topic. However, the fact that it was a client of that agent that has now departed the club, it's led me to say, you know what, I am going to put forward my point of view, my perspective on what's there, and I just wanted to emphasise again that this isn't, as you said, this isn't reactionary. It's something that that there's been many conversations that I've had about it. And there's enough commentary out there in the rugby league world about the issues that are faced if you have any agent who has a big say in any club. And that's just one of the issues that I think the Eels have to address. But look, it is just back to specifically the Blaize situation. It's disappointing, without question. It's well, it's probably beyond disappointing. I'm trying to be
underselling it a little bit there. Yeah.
Because we are. Look, I don't even think I can talk about this in isolation. It's even though
it's endemic of a much bigger issue, isn't it? Like,
it's see, when we start talking about this sort of situation, it's the optics now that become just as problematic for Parramatta as anything else. And you only have to look at the media focus that has been drawn to it as a result, where it gets the sort of attention, it's getting headline attention, and then it's casting aspersions on how the club does business. And you don't, no organisation wants that. Like the thing that needs to be, look, the people that are running the club, they're not setting out to have these sorts of things happen. But as I said, when plans are put in place and players are identified as being a significant part of the future of the club, and you lose those players, and it doesn't matter what the circumstances are of losing them, because as I emphasised, they're different circumstances for all the players, all those talented pathways players that made their NRL debuts this year that are disappearing. There's different factors behind them, but somehow the club have to look for ways to turn this around to actually have success with these plans. And I don't have the answer for that. I'm sure there has been non-stop discussions and meetings and what have you going on within the organisation. But they have to find a way to turn this around. They have to find a way that they can deal with a vast array of circumstances that are still leading to the one outcome, which is these talented players are disappearing, and it's a big part of the future of the club.
Yeah, right now, and look, the club's certainly not out there saying it's fine, there's nothing to worry about. I'm not accusing them of that, but from the outsider perspective looking in, I think I've referenced it a while back on the podcast, but it's like Naked Gun, isn't it? And Leslie Nielsen, nothing to see here, move on, disperse sort of energy right now, while the building is literally on fire. So the club need to have some pretty brutal conversations. Losing Blaize Talagi, it is not acceptable. And the problem is that you lose Blaize, 99.99% likely you lose his younger brother, Ryder, who is a current Australian schoolboy captain of your Harold Matts team. Blue chip front row prospect in his own right. The damage just cascades on. And this, I had a bit of a rant about this on the Para podcast, but this speaks to a much wider issue at the club, 60s. And it goes back to our last genuinely tough season, because 2023 grand final slump, signs that would spiral into this year. Obviously, it wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible. But 2018 was the last major year where the Eels struggled massively, and it led to wholesale change. Obviously, famously, there was a massive review, led to seismic changes in terms of the way the club is structured, and those changes were done explicitly as a separation of executive power from the head coach into other roles at the club. And I was not against it at the time, and I'm still not against it because it makes sense in terms of having a better balance of executive authority. But the whole point of that reshuffle of the appointment of new roles across multiple levels, not just the GM of football, but above, below, around all that sort of level, was so that if you ever have a situation where you deem that the NRL coach is not performing up to scratch, and clearly that happened this year, the board made the call on Brett Arthur, moved on from him mid-season in unfortunately a rather messy application of that decision. But the whole point is that your NRL team would be struggling from bad coaching in this hypothetical or this actual in the case of season 2024, and that's not good enough on that level. But you make the move, that would be balanced against the fact that the coach, the NRL coach, does not have executive authority in the pathways, in the flag, in the cup, in terms of recruitment and retention, so that the rest of the club will be in a healthy position if you have to cut out, tumour is a terrible way of saying it, but just the sickness that's at the NRL level, and replace them with a new coach, in this case Jason Rolls. And that's not what's happened. Instead of moving on from Brad Arthur because you think he's not doing a good enough job, you've moved on from Brad Arthur because you think he's not doing a good enough job, and the rest of the club is burning down. Like, what was the point of that 2018 review in that case? It is very frustrating that we have put in systems and fail-safes that are not fail-safing.
Yeah, so I could talk about some of the positives that I see in pathways. The recent staffing appointments are outstanding. It's without question. I can see that those particular systems are in place to continue to produce players of the future. But, and I'll come back to it, something is going wrong when the talent that's emerged this season cannot be retained.
Yeah.
So
what is the point of being a development club and, being less active in the player market as a, reflection of that macro decision? You're going to build your club internally, augment externally, instead of going out and getting key players externally and then, augmenting internally. If you cannot keep the internal talent. I mean, to win an SG Ball title last year with, one of the most talent-laden squads we've seen in that Division 60s, and to go on and lose 3 core players, and again, justifications for Ethan Sanders, he had, players blocking him here. Could the club have kept him? Perhaps. Maybe if they'd gone about it slightly differently, maybe they could have convinced him to stick around for a year or two as an apprentice to Mitchell Moses. But in all likelihood, he's still favoured to go elsewhere to seek an opportunity to start in the NRL. I understand that. But, again, Matt Arthur, once you made the decision on Brad, then obviously that complicates the picture. Maybe you still could have banged out a deal if you'd handled the Arthur release differently. I don't know. But the Talagi one's inexcusable. Core player in your lineup this year, getting better and better week to week, has been shuffled across 3 or 4 different positions across the season, and maybe that's factored into his decision as well. He had no stability at Parramatta, which wasn't his fault, nor was it really any of the coaches' faults that were here in 2024, whether it was Arthur or Barrett. With the issues of depth in the NRL team, it's not even worth repeating at this point. But he was a victim of it, probably the prime victim of it in terms of any player in that back line. And yeah, you cannot forget winning premierships. You can't even be competitive on a week-to-week basis in the NRL if you're going to handle things the way we've handled them. Losing core players the way we have, and yes, Penrith is obviously a destination venue. They're, back-to-back premiers. But by the same token, if you're not keeping your Talangis, then what's the point of being a development club? It behooves the club to call themselves that. Yeah.
See, the thing is, right, and you've just taken a bit of a dive into each of those players individually, which is Sanders, a bit of a roadblock in front of him.
But other clubs have kept players of roadblocks.
Yeah. And this is what I want to get to, right? Sanders, a bit of a roadblock in front of him. Matt Arthur, his father was the coach. There's obviously impacts from sacking family. And then Blaize, it's, from what I understand, there was no lowballing of an offer. It's been basically Parramatta on its merits losing a player to a club that is at the top of the game in the premiership. So you go 3 different circumstances, 3 extenuating circumstances. However, I come back to this. If you keep going, look, this is the circumstance that we've lost this player. This is the circumstance that we've lost this player. This is the circumstance we've lost this player. This is the circumstance we've lost this player. This is the circumstance lost this player. And then you balance it against, this is the circumstance we're able to keep this player. It's not weighting very well at the moment. And you can talk extenuating circumstances, and there are. There are extenuating circumstances. There are individual circumstances. But the club has to find a way. They're not going to, I strongly believe they're not going to take issue with me saying this. The club has to find a way to generate success in terms of the retention of players. They have to find a way to, no, we shouldn't say of players. We have to talk about pathways talent, right? The pathways, and by that I mean the pathways talent that we've identified to keep. Because I don't want to talk about players that the club has lost before. I don't want to get into history with this. We're just talking about right now, because this is the Parramatta Eels are an aging roster. That's just fact. There are 10 players of the 23 who are currently signed to next year who will be 30 years of age or older. And we desperately need the injection of players from the future, for the future. Now, there are obviously other players coming through. And you had, we've just had schoolboys, 4 players named in 18 Australian schoolboys. Let's think about that proportion, right? 4 players named in the Australian schoolboys team. However, looks like one of them's gone straight away in Talagi. So is that continuing? How far does this go? This is what the fear is. And it's part of why I wrote what I wrote, because we can't undo, the Eels can't undo what's just happened this year. And there's a lot of realities around this. I mean, the club has, in sitting at the bottom of the table, makes itself, and it's just a reality, a less attractive proposition. A less attractive proposition. Recruitment becomes harder. And, you might be in a position where you're spending a little bit more to either attract players or even to keep players. It's the realities of the rugby league player market. We have to get our backyard right. As you said, John, if we're a development club, we can't afford to have 3 of the 4 players, pathways players who debuted in first grade this year, leave the club and then go well, we couldn't stop it. They have to find a way to stop it. If the players are part of the plans, there has to be a way found to be successful in retaining these players. Because there are more players coming through. What's going to happen with them? I can't give a guarantee to listeners that they are going to stay, because any listener can turn around and go, well, what's just happened here? And you know, the reality is you can't make guarantees about this player will stay or that player will stay. But we need to see some successes. We need to see more successes than lack of success.
Exactly, because you're living an absolute, beyond unicorn optimist dream if you think that the club can keep every good, talented junior they have. We're not asking the club to do that. It is a psychotic, player market out there already with the amount of NRL clubs that we have, even considering that there are 2 more in the pipeline. So it's the club was never going to be able to keep every blue chip prospect. The problem is we are losing them in bunches and droves right now when when the club is telling us its mission statement is to be a development club. And that is unacceptable. Losing 1 or 2 here or there, that is the game. That is how it plays out. But losing legitimate blue chip prospects in bundles, it's not sustainable. It means it's not just consigning you to a bad 2024, it's consigning you to a bad 2025. It's putting you behind schedule in a play market that's going to be even more competitive in 18 months' time as Perth starts to build for its launch, as PNG follows in its wake, and you've got 2 more teams with mega caps that will be competing for every player signing. So being on time, on schedule in the NRL, it cannot be overstated how important it is, because the moment you slip behind, you're not behind on one front, you're behind on 16, 17, 18 fronts. And those teams can take a small advantage and turn it into a big advantage relative to you. So the Eels need to figure this out ASAP. I feel sorry for Jason Rolls. I know he's obviously been remunerated, reflective of being a head coach, but it's a tough gig to walk into. But the Eels got issues, mate, and they've got to figure it out sooner rather than later.
And look, there's something else I want to clarify. If you don't think the club and the people involved are hurting as a result of what's transpired, and people need to understand as well that there is a care and a passion for those that work within the organisation for the club to be successful. But they also have to be blunt with themselves and say, we're not getting this right. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, there has to be a way to ensure that this didn't happen, because I can tell you that I don't think they would have been expecting to lose Blaize. I think they would have been. I don't know that there was anything that we've heard different stories in the past about how negotiations have gone with players, and why aspects of the negotiation process was not maybe what it could have been. I don't know that this is the case here. They have to really look at what are the reasons that we've lost players, and don't identify it as outlier reasons or exceptional circumstances. Start to identify some common threads, if possible, for why things are happening. And maybe the common thread might not be let's hope that the common thread that they find is not things that they can't control, but rather things that they can control and fix, because there are going to be aspects where maybe it's out of their control. But we've got to go about making the club attractive to keep young players who have been Parramatta aspirational. And that's the thing. If we're at the point where you lose Parramatta aspirational players, what happens if you've got Pathways players who aren't as Parramatta aspirational but are open to whatever opportunities are out there? How do you persuade them to stay? And look, the tough thing I think is going to be that for every player, whether it be Pathways players, whether it be current first grade players that you want to keep, whether it be people that you're trying to recruit, there has to be better optics. In other words, not just about what they're seeing happening at the moment, but in terms of a vision of where the club is going. Because there still remains positives about the size of the club and the benefits that can be there with playing at the club. But right now, the toughest thing to sell is the fact that the team is not performing well, and we're not able to keep Pathways players that we want to keep. And that, once you start to get that sort of optics, and then when you start to get, because we know how the media responds to this, they're going to feed off this. And so we've already seen the pile-on in terms of basically saying that the club is a joke. That's basically the take that's being put out there by the media. They need to put a stop to this perception. The only way they can put a stop to the perception is to start getting some success in whatever they set out to achieve as a club. And whether that be retention, whether it be recruitment, whether that be especially on-field performance. I think it's going to be a long process, John, because I think you can't undo the optics of losing players like this now. The first step is probably going to have to be, and this is the brutal reality, recruitment's probably going to be really, really tough. So
I mean, when retention is tough, it means that recruitment's even harder, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and we've probably gone a bit deeper than we originally intended in our chat in this podcast, but they're going to have to get better results on the field next year. Like that's probably going to be one of the driving forces.
I mean, isn't it funny, like that circular sort of result? Jason Riles is now in a similar position to what Brad Arthur found himself in when he first walked into the job, in terms of having to overperform in order to inspire recruitment. So it's a tough gig for a coach, but that's the reality of the situation.
It absolutely is. And if you remember, when we were doing our interviews, I shouldn't say interviews, but when we were having our recorded conversations with the Eels assistant coaches back in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
and we were reflecting with them back on, especially Murph and Pete Gentle, and we were reflecting back on what it was like to come into a club that had been the Wooden Spoon team for 2 years, and they talked about the playing group was at a low. The ones that were still there, they were at a low in terms of their feelings about football in general. They made it a point to make training somewhere that the players really wanted to be. They made it as much fun as possible, and they built up that sort of camaraderie between the players as a result of being part of that group a place that they look forward to be every day. And I've spoken to the players from that era, and they extended their social bonds, as all teams do anyway, but they're a particularly tight group. They enjoyed each other's company. And then what ends up happening is the coaches can extract a little bit more from them because they want to be there. They want to be turning up. They want to be doing their best at training. And then that starts to reflect on the football field. I mean, when I was going and watching training back then, the games that were a feature of the training sessions, I mean, a wide variety of games where the players were just having straight out fun. There was plenty of hard work, but they always knew there was going to be something that they did where they were going to have a great time out there on the field, because footballers, let's face it, they grow up playing a game that they love, and then they're able to make a career out of a game that they love. You don't want them falling out of love with football. You don't want them falling out of love with training. How many times do you hear players who retire, they say that they know it's time to give it away because training becomes that grind for them. They don't, they're all of a sudden they're looking at a pre-season and thinking, I don't think I can do this again. So the fun's gone out of it for them. The joy's gone out of it for them. So we're probably going to be going through that mix of instilling a hard work ethic along with having to make training a place where the players want to be. We don't know what Jason Ryle's philosophy is going to be. That hard work's probably going to be a big component of it because of where he's, that Storm background.
Melbourne Storm come New England Patriots, do your job sort of mentality that you see built up from the smallest player on the there's a lot smallest contract in the roster to the biggest star, which it's a recipe for success. Don't get me wrong, but I think that'll be a big part of his ethos as a coach for sure.
Yeah. So look, I'm just trying to say to listeners, there is a tough journey ahead. That's the reality, and what we really have to be looking to is that there's so many components to turn things around, and we've spoke a lot about, okay, we just got to get the retention of our best players who feature in our plans. And I want to emphasize that again. Players who feature in our plans, there has to be success found in keeping the players who are in our plans. All right? That's part of it. But the other part of it is in fixing up the optics, in fixing up the perspectives about and the impressions about Parramatta, they're also going to just straight out need to get better results on the field next year, because that drives people wanting to be part of the organisation. That drives people, young players, being aspirational to want to be pulling on a blue and gold jersey. Look, there are so many factors that are involved in turning the club around right now. And I have no doubt that there are constant discussions going on within the Eels organisation. But, that elephant in the room right now is the loss of players that were part of our future plans. And we really need to start getting successes in that area, no matter what the circumstances are. So anyway, John,
plenty said in that topic. Let's talk a bit of football. We've got 5 games on the docket, the preview. So let's get into it, mate. We start, as always, with the Jersey Flegg. They're going to New Zealand as well, mate, but I'm not sure if it's on the same flight, given that they play on Saturday, 10 o'clock a.m., North Harbour Stadium. Eels in 9th place facing the 13th place New Zealand Warriors. The Eels, again, we are basing this assumption on a top 6, which may or may not be correct. We haven't gotten further clarification on that. But if it is a top 6, the Eels are just one win outside of the top 6, chasing the St. George Dragons. St. George Illawarra Dragons are merged in this particular competition on 24 points, Eels on 22. So a massive game in the context of that. If it is a top 5, they're 2 wins behind Manly 60, so they're going to need a lot of results going their way in the handful of games left this season. But looking at this team, a couple of changes, including a correction on the team sheet that better explains a certain back rower. But we start at fullback, Zach Hunter. Muhammad Al-Madine, unfortunately, being dropped from New South Wales Cup to make way for Lorenzo Mortalo and Isaac Lumi. So he is the loser in that situation, but the beneficiaries are the Jersey Flegg. He's on one wing, Ollie McCarthy on the other. Devontae Vivella and Antioch Faitala Mariner round out a very good backline there. In the halves, Arpa Twiddle and Matty Hunter, the 6 and 7, another good pair of players. Front row sees Sam Tuivasa and Tinkin Brown, bookends to Riley Smith. In the back row, it isn't Dom Ferrugia making a positional transfer and debut in the one game. It's Dom Destratus in the back row on the edges. So clerical error on Teamless Tuesday. As we expected, 60s, it was Dom Destratus coming back to this one. And he'll be on one edge with young gun Josiah Funa Ayuta on the other. Tyrese Lakini, the lock forward. So it's a young and talented back row right there. On the interchange, Yaya Ayachi, Dom's twin, Raf Destratus, Max Tupou, and Damascus Nemia. Pretty well balanced bench as well. Michael Abdo, the 18th man / concussion substitute. Eels, yeah, they met the Warriors a few weeks ago, 60s. They did a solid job against them back then. I think goal kicking probably inhibited the scoreboard from being properly reflective of how much better they were on the field. But yeah, big game here. It's a tough trip as well. 10 a.m. start in New Zealand, which, it's got to make a slight adjustment to the biometric clock there. But a chance to potentially finish the round inside the top 6 pending results.
Yeah, I've just, by the way, I've just done a little edit on the team list that we take directly from the published team list. So we've got Dom Destratus in there. You had that in your comments that went with the team list forward 40 about how it is. We did expect that it was going to be Dom Destratus rather than.
I mean, I was excited to see Dom Ferrugia in the team. We rate young Dom massively, but he's a specialist winger, so it's a hell of a transition to go from wing to back row all in the space of a few weeks or months since the conclusion of the Pathways programs. Yes.
Now, you mentioned about the performance that the Eels had only a couple of weeks ago in defeating the Warriors at Lidcombe Oval. So, geez, it only felt like a week ago, but it's, what would it be, 3 weeks ago
About
now?
3
Something
weeks
like
now,
that. Yeah. But look, it was actually a convincing performance. It was for mine, it was a more dominant win than the scoreline indicated. They probably drifted a little bit away from their game plan in the second half. They didn't get themselves into any trouble, but it was certainly one where the first half was really strong performances across the park with the team. Now, you mentioned about Muhammad. Well, he didn't play in the Jersey Flegg team that day. That, I think, was his debut game.
Correct. He had a great
for
first
the New
half.
South Wales Cup. Yeah,
great first half, and then the entire team didn't get to touch football in the second half.
Yes. So, I think on the face of it, it may be that his inclusion, and I think maybe a couple of other changes, it might just be a slightly stronger team, team list that they're actually being able to put out in this match. Yes, it is always a big ask when you have to fly to another country to play the game, even though it's a shortish flight.
And the reverse is true, obviously, for the Warriors. Like that's not
that's what I was going to say, is that they were playing a Warriors team who had made that same trip in reverse. But look, the thing is that there is a consistency of effort that has been the feature of the Jersey Flegg team this season. And we banged on about it. It's remarkable that a team that loses 7 straight to begin the season could turn things around as they have. And even in a couple of those losses, in winning 9 of their last 12 games, you're still looking at it and going, well, they faced a tough opponent and they probably should have got the victory.
Yeah, losing 7 straight, meaning they go 9-3 in the remaining games. Of those 3 losses, they barely lost the Raiders, had a decent loss to the Knights, who are a good team. So, yeah, they're in some serious form. And it's worth reminding that global bye last week, round prior to going into that mass week off, accounted for the competition leaders, the Bulldogs, 19-12. At the time, Canberra have now supplanted them because of that loss in a very clinical effort out of Belmore. So in rare form right now, if they can make it to the finals, they can make some serious noise. Not too dissimilar from last year, where slow start gave way to big reinforcements from the SG Ball, energized the squad, saw them go on a big run, falling 1 game short of the grand final. So, yeah, I'm really keen to see what they can do. Get this win.
I'm where I have my caution, right, is it was very early on in their in turning their season around, but one of those 3 losses was after a flight down to Melbourne to play the Storm. And the Storm, aren't a particularly strong team in this grade, and they dropped that game and they did not play very good football at all. I think they did have a last-minute withdrawal from the team on that day.
Josh Lynn,
I think he got ill just before the flight was due to take off.
Yeah, I think he had the flu or something similar, pretty bad, and was a late withdrawal.
Yes. So there were circumstances around that. If they adjust to the travel and they have been able to keep their minds focused. It was a global bye last week, so none of the teams played last week. Don't know what the prep's been like for the team coming into this, but if their headspace is the same as it has been for quite some time, they really do play as a unit. They celebrate each other's successes. They're playing some very good, tough football. Defence has improved immeasurably, and defence is a measure of attitude. So there's plenty to like about how these boys are playing, and I'll tip them to get the win and to continue to keep themselves in the fight to play finals football.
Yeah.
John, are you going to tip the same?
Confidence, the greatest commodity when it comes to professional sports, and the Flegg have it in spades right now. Always a tough assignment to go across the Tasman, which is why the Warriors' efforts in the Flegg and the junior reps has been so commendable in this particular season. But, yeah, I think our Eels get the job done and maybe win well too.
Oh, well, look, and really a shout-out to everyone involved with the Flegg team for for how they are going, whether from the players through to the staff involved.
Yeah.
It's
what a turnaround. That's such a commitment to your fundamentals there from both players and staff to turn it around from where they were and to have that belief in your systems. And, yeah, well done. So keen to see how it plays out for the rest of the year. Hope they can make the finals, mate, because, like I said, I think they make real noise in sudden death football.
Yep. Okay, and we move on.
Yeah, to a very unique time slot, mate. One that we saw in years gone by, the old Monday night football slot that Fox used to have, the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, fresh off an 18-14 victory over the South Sydney Rabbitohs to bring their season back to parity, 2 wins, 2 losses. They head out to the New South Wales Rugby League Centre of Excellence, Monday 7 p.m. You can catch this one live streamed on New South Wales Rugby League TV, so if you've got that subscription, make sure to catch it while you're having dinner or just after dinner. Eels look like this. Yasmin Baker at fullback, Debbie Dwahi and Shay Shipton on the flanks, Caitlin Pearden and Aliyah Hamono in the centres, Talara Bambut 5'8", Sarah Dimmick at halfback. Front row sees Alita Namose and Tafoa Asua as the two props, Chelsea Makira at dummy half. Chloe Jackson has been named in this grade 60s, but we are expecting a game day change, given that she has also been named to start in the NRLW. Which means at least one change to this roster, which we spoke about on Team West Tuesday. But right now, she's in the 11. Captain Talisha Maiva in the 12. Riverly Arlo, another talented young back rower, locks the scrum. On the interchange, Ashley Pottinger as the dummy half utility. Lasalio Sita Payne and Raishi Farmasili as the two big bookends. And then Fontaine Tafua is the back row substitute, where we anticipate could come into starting calculations, meaning that one of Liana Dimmick, Tahila Valuanga, Caitlin Stanley, Bella Sanford, and Kate Fallon would come onto the bench, and you were tipping Bella Sanford, and I think that's probably a pretty safe bet right now, 60s.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, it's this team, when they get things right, when they can get their, eliminate some of the errors that are there, they're going to be tough for any team to beat. I will shout out to the Wenty Magpies.
Yeah, they're killing it right now.
They caught the eye when I saw the opposed session that they were involved with the Eels, NRLW and Harvey Norman Premiership training session. I think if they can get that right, I believe if they can eliminate those errors, that they can play finals football. It's when you watch them, it's quite extraordinary, because they can go from completing almost textbook perfect sets through to little passages where a bad pass becomes contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got the pieces are in place with the players that are there. It's just a matter of them making it easier for themselves with better completion rate. And look, for mine, it's almost as simple as that. Control your errors, and you're going to get the win. And I think they will win this week. I see errors as the only obstacle to them not being able to get victory.
Yeah, Sharks just one win on the season. Not to say that they can't play great football, but as much as we were pretty serious in our discussions about the issues with the club's stance on being a development club with the men's pathways, I've got to give them a serious round of applause for how they've had a nice, I wouldn't say it's like a wholesale paradigm shift from last season to this season in terms of the women's pathways, but there has been an adjustment, and the way they've gone about constructing the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership squad is exactly how I envision our New South Wales Cup squad being built in an ideal development club mantra or macro vision pathway. They've got so much young talent in there being augmented by some smart recruitment in the likes of Yasmin Baker, Sarah Dimmick, Shay Shipton, Chelsea Makiri, Tafua Asua coming across from Manly. Like, that is smart, augmented recruitment there. So, well done to the club. And it's reflective in the NRLW too, where we're seeing pathways players and returning players, self-identifying Parramatta players, killing it in round one against the Brisbane Broncos.
And again, we want to talk about the fact that the pathways are actually getting some things very right in terms of player development. And an extra shout out I want to give here, John, to a player that you mentioned we think will come into the starting lineup, Fontaine Tafunga. She was playing Lisa Fiola Cup this year.
That's a hell of a jump. I mean, seriously. She was outstanding in the Lisa Fiola too. We had her straight into the little black book of players to watch in the future. I don't think it'd be this short term into the future. What a meteoric rise for her. Rivali Arlo, another fantastic back rower too. Talisha Maeva, another outstanding young back. The club has got an embarrassment of riches in the back row right now. So I'd be expecting all three of them to be featuring in the NRLW sooner rather than later on the trajectory, that they're on right now. Because, like you said, from Lisa Fiola to reserve grade to senior football, that's wild. And she's probably going to play really well for across the totality of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, you never underestimate the Sharks because they've long been one of the forces in women's rugby league, but they've only had the one win out of their 4 matches this season. So, and based on what I've seen of the other teams and trying to look at, how form lines up, and then what I've seen of the Eels Harvey Norman team and the players that are in there, and obviously we've got a bit of a background in knowing their path to this team and how they perform as players. I'm pretty confident in tipping an Eels win in this game, John. I'm not going to attempt to tip a margin
to quantify it, but you're qualifying it.
And because the thing is as well, goal kicking is a challenge in this competition as well, and like for all teams, it's if you get tries that are scored out wide, it's a tougher ask for the female players to be landing the goals from the sideline, and that's just a statement of fact. It's not saying that there aren't, because there are some extraordinary players. We've seen Parramatta's own Alicia Bell, who I've seen her nail extraordinary kicks from the sideline. We see it in the NRLW with some of the players, but we also see that there aren't as many goal kickers spread across all the teams.
No.
And even a player last week, like the Eels were up against Maddie Studden playing for the Rabbitohs, and she's always been a goal kicker in her time in rugby league.
There was a difference between the two teams. Maddie Studden, 1 from 3.
Yep.
Talara Bamblett, perfect, 3 from 3. And I suppose that's the big thing for the Eels. Talara with a bit of form coming into this game off the tee.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway, mate, that's I think we're both confident of a win.
Backing our girls here in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, which takes us to the male counterparts in the knock-on effect New South Wales Cup. They'll be going to, I think they'll be playing the New Zealand today with their senior cohorts in the NRL. They're playing tomorrow in the afternoon, 3:15 p.m, Friday the 2nd of August. Curtain raiser at Go Media Stadium in Auckland. These two teams met not too long ago, when we mentioned the Flegg game that was won so convincingly, even from bad goal kicking. We saw quite the most personified Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of rugby league game I've ever seen from the Eels. And unfortunately, Mr. Hyde won out in this particular one with a second half capitulation that gifted the Warriors an outrageous win. So Eels enter this one 9th place, and unfortunately Sixties, for as good as they were travelling, I think they're now pretty safely on the outside looking in. Even if we were in a best case scenario top 6, the Eels are now 5 points adrift of the Penrith Panthers. So I think they're only playing for pride right now, and their team is looking like this. Fullback.
Hang on. Aren't the Brisbane Broncos 6 points adrift in the NRL? Aren't they still rated a chance?
Mathematicals?
Hang on.
Yeah.
No, hang on. There is only 5 rounds left, I think, in the New South Wales Cup. They finish a round early.
Yeah.
So
that's clearly the big difference between the two teams, clearly.
Yeah.
Yes. But yes. Zach Sini is at fullback. Lorenzo Molitalo back from a 1-week suspension for a hair pull. He's on one wing. Isaac Lumilumi the other. Araz Nanva, the young Flegg eligible centre, getting his second cap there. So well done to Araz, holding his place in the back line. Morgan Harper, named this week. You seem a little bit more bullish on him getting to play this week, 60. So that's a boost to the team if that is the case. Otherwise, we'll be expecting a pre-game reshuffle, obviously. Josh Lynn, Ethan Sanders, the 6 and 7 respectively. Front row, Offa Hickey Ogden, Matty Alpha, Makahesi Makatoa from 8 to 10. Jock Brazel, Matt Dury on the edges, Brock Parker locking the scrum. On the interchange, Minnie Luke, Tony Matayeli, Saxon Pryke, and Reece Alderton. Kyle Castle, 18th man / concussion substitute. Taking on a Warriors team boosted by, because of the cascade effect from the NRL, young Tuapikis at fullback, obviously a very talented player there. Edward Cozzy also back, another seasoned NRL player. Luke Metcalf, I didn't realise he was back. I thought he was still out. So the Warriors choosing to go a different direction, the halves in the NRL, or maybe just getting some playing time into Metcalf's legs here. Who else is there? We've got a Bunty Afoa named here. Kalani Going is the captain at lock forward. So it's a pretty handy Warriors outfit, one that the Eels obviously pretty intimately acquainted with at the moment, given that crazy game they played at Lidcombe. Look, tough game here, 60s. Got the flight to New Zealand, playing in front of what will be, even for the curtain raiser, a bumper crowd at Go Media Stadium. I believe it's a sellout. So our boys are going to be doing it pretty tough here, at least on initial inspection from my point of view.
John, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have backed this Eels team to probably get the job done.
Yeah, well, less than 3 weeks or whatever it was, and 40 minutes, I would have said the same thing. Going into halftime, following their best half of football I'd seen all year, and then the most manic swing the other way I've ever seen on a football field, pretty much, to go from 28-4 leaders to, 44-28 or 46-28, something of those two margins losers, was I have seen collapses. I don't think I've ever seen a collapse of that magnitude from that sort of advantage.
It was a 42-0 second half.
Yeah, that run against the Eels was just insane.
I'd like to try to put it in perspective as a spectator at the ground. So I'm sitting there at halftime with a 28-4 scoreline, and I'm feeling really bullish about what's transpired. We've just seen a win in the Flegg, to keep their finals hopes alive. The New South Wales Cup have come out and played an outstanding first half. It was some of the best football they'd played this season. Never did it cross my mind that not only were they a chance of losing, but they were a chance of getting flogged. And,
yep.
But within about 10 minutes of the second half, you could see what was going to transpire, because there were hands on the hips and heads looking down whilst they still had a 12-point lead. It was almost palpable that the self-belief had evaporated from the team and that they had resigned themselves to getting run down. If you had have taken a photo of the players after the second try was scored by the Warriors in the second half, and as I said, bear in mind that still left them 12 points adrift.
Yeah, if you cropped out the scoreboard, you would have thought that it was already plus 20, plus 30 in New Zealand's favour.
Yeah. And we've seen what's happened since then, which is that if they followed it up with 2 more losses, it's pretty hard to tip the team, because honestly, I don't know what their headspace is. I really don't know what their headspace is, because on paper, there's a lot of players that I like in this team. But it's not happening for them. And I guess that's part of the problem when, you've got a lot of these players are involved in training with the NRL team, whether they're full-timers or not. They're at these stages of the season, they try to get them there for opposed sessions where they can. So they're involved in that. And I guess that it's part of the trickle-down effect. If you've got a first-grade team that's struggling to win, and with that goes all the drop in confidence and belief and It's hard to create positivity in the team under those circumstances. In the squad, they're part of the squad. And then when they start losing themselves, they've basically gone from having a really good run of stringing together strong performances into a complete collapse, and then just not happening for them. So I'd love to tip the team to win, but when they're travelling away from home against a team who scored 42 points against them in the second half just 2-3 weeks ago, I can't do it, John. I think the Warriors get this, and I think they win it comfortably.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, it's going to be a tough sell for the Parramatta Eels this week in New South Wales Cup. So, yeah, I'm tipping a loss as well. Alrighty, let's get back on the positive wagon, though. Eels in the NRLW coming off an outstanding season-opening victory over the Brisbane Broncos. They now have a near top-of-the-table clash against the Cronulla Sharks. Eels in third coming into this one, Sharks in second. The bookies being very quick to adjust Parramatta's line. Near $5 outsiders against Brisbane. Sixties are now $2.35 to $1.60 against the Sharks. So much more even on the line there. This one's been played at Allianz Stadium, Sydney. Sunday, 12 o'clock p.m. You can catch it on 9 Now, KO and Foxtel. I think there's another 9 channel there. Go for HD maybe? I don't know. But make sure to catch this one because the product is fantastic. Eels. This game is billed as a home game 60s. I despise that. I know that you can't play every game at the proper home venue in the NRLW just right now, but this is, Allianz I know is loosely West Sydney now, but it feels as much as a neutral venue as anything for Cronulla and Parramatta. So net advantage to the Sharks, I suppose, here. But Eels taking on a Cronulla outfit that looks like this. Fullback is Jada Taylor. You got Staples and Ravix on the wing. Tiana Penatani captaining in the centres alongside Biddle on the other side. Tonagato and Preston in the halves. Johnston of the Ellie variety, because there is obviously another Johnston in the competition. And Wheeler front row. Quincy Dodd dummy half. Holmes, Byers and Anderson in the back row. You got Hanaway, Saunders, Foliaki and Dimmick on the interchange. Extend the roster, Tucker Patolo, Davis Walsh, Leilua and Tapsell. So quite a number of former Eels there, 60s, going through obviously Penatani, but then you've got Preston, Johnston, Anderson at lock forward, and then on the interchange, Foliaki as well as Davis Walsh in the extended roster. So it'll be some pretty strong ties between the two teams here. And then for the Eels, couple of enforced changes due to injury. Poor Ruben Charrington and Boss Kapoor, as well as Coach Georgialis, having to roll off the punches after some round one damage. They've got those changes making the team look like this. Abby Church at fullback, Zoe Fay, Monique Donovan, the wingers, Rory Owen and Rosie Kelly making impressive debuts in round one, obviously holding their places in the back line. Speaking of impressive, Cassie Toihiku and Rachel Pearson looking to helm the team in 6 and 7 respectively. Elsie Albert, Maddie Jones, the two bookends. Tanika Todd-Hunter getting the promotion from interchange dummy half to starting dummy half. Likewise, Chloe Jackson coming up from the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership to start on the edge. Mahalia Murphy captains the team on the other side of the field. Kennedy Charrington is the lock forward. Interchange sees Rosemary Beckett as the utility player that we assume is going to platoon dummy half with Tanika Todd-Hunter. Rosemary is a career halfback, but probably having to make a rapid pivot at the moment to help the team. You got Tyler Amiatu and Jade Fanua alongside Ruby Jean Kenneth Ellis as the three powerful interchange forwards. Extend the roster, Tafawa Asua, Pahuka Berryman Duff, Chelsea Makira, Kate Fallon, and Yasmin Baker. Casey Badger is the main official on this one. And yeah, this is I said to, I think Hamish on the Para podcast, mate, that coming out and having a statement win against Brisbane is one thing, and obviously it's a fantastic way to start the season, but decent teams can have great games. Good and great teams consistently win. And this is their chance to follow up a statement win with a different kind of statement by backing it up against another very good team in the Cronulla Sharks. Really well-balanced roster for them. Got an absolute superstar in the halves in Emma Tonagato. Jada Taylor was a breakout player last year. Very well-balanced across the forward pack. This is their chance to show that they can win and win consistently.
Yeah, and like you, I can't understand how a game in the middle of the Sydney's eastern suburbs is actually deemed to be a Parramatta home game, but that's just the quirks of, what the
like I said, loosely West Sydney, mate, very loosely.
oh yeah, yes, well, yeah.
It technically there is stuff east of it, so it makes it partially at least West Sydney.
There's a beach or two east of it. That's about it. Anyway, look, it's terrible misfortune for those two girls to be out of the team now for the rest of the season in Boss Kapoor and Ruben Cherrington, and Ruben in particular being the victim of a foul play in her circumstance. It's she had an almighty first game of the season, and her and Kennedy are really aggressive players. They opponents know they're out on the field.
Yeah, I mean they are very much the epitome of, you love to have them on your team, you would hate to play against them. They got that fire and that niggle, that competitiveness that can get under the skin, and you love it when it's on your team. It's very frustrating when the opposition have a player capable of that. So big loss with Ruben. She had a fantastic opening game. 60s was set for a genuine breakout season, but injury, suspension, whatever is the factor for a player going out of a team. When that door shuts, another door opens. Tanika now gets the chance to jump in and make some big plays. And bear in mind that she was a couple of centimetres short of a pair of tries against the Broncos too. She was a threat from short range against Brisbane. Just needs to tidy up that quite literal finishing touch to be a real threat inside the red zone. And yeah, I'm keen to see what she can do, and keen to see Rosie Beckett, where he obviously had a very high wrap on coming through the pathways. It's going to be a tough transition to play dummy half. It's a very different role in terms of your defensive assignments and the amount of, not just the amount of times you handle the ball, but the manner in which you handle the ball. It seems silly, but there is a huge difference from passing from the carpet and passing from the waist. And being able to do that tidily, time after time, set after set. There's a reason why dummy half is a very difficult position, so I'm keen to see how she handles it. But the rest of the team looks fantastic, and I think they can really mix it up with the Sharks here.
John, Rose is one of those players that you say they need to realise how good they are.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just not too dissimilar to Cassie Toihiku last year, wasn't it? Where it's just a case of Cassie realising that she can be one of the best players in this competition. Same thing for Rosemary. Just a little bit of self-belief, a chance to play some football, and I think she can go a long way in this competition.
Yeah, the Eels have interesting depth in the halves because, behind Rose, who, if we put her down as a halfback, you've got Talara Bamblett, who is playing in the 5'8" role. But ostensibly could be playing half just as well. You got Sarah Dimmick, who has done a fine job in appearances for the Harvey Norman team, and then you've also got Raf Perigo.
And I believe she's injured, but would also be in the factor is Bahuka Berryman Duff, who played 5'8" for the Eels last year.
Yes, so. That's why I think you're likely to see these players that are ostensibly halves that are now, with the injury to Kennedy Cherrington, perhaps going to be a factor in playing that sort of utility role off the bench. Look, when it comes to that first round, you had both teams putting in good performances. As you said, you've got to back up that first week, and you know that travelling to Brisbane, coming off being wooden spooners last year, the Eels would have been hyped to make a statement.
Yeah.
in that game.
Big emotional
It's-
high, all the adrenaline. You got to make sure you come down from that and don't crash.
Yeah, and I think Steve Georgalis is the ideal coach.
Yeah.
In that regard, he's very measured. Yes, you couldn't wipe the smile off his face last week, but we've had the opportunity to get to know Steve a little bit and know how he sees the game. Also know how he communicates. Steve's very much a straight talker.
Yep.
You know that, and we were able to have some candid conversations with Steve about players and what goals are for how games might be played and yeah, he's a straight shooter. He doesn't mince words, but he's also the right sort of communicator as well, if that makes sense. When I say he doesn't mince words, he's not gonna put it in a way that's going to be taken in a detrimental way by any player. I think he just has a really good balance in how he communicates with players, and you've already seen the influence that he's having with this team just in that first up performance. But that game wasn't in isolation because you had the pointer to it with the trial performance, and I had the pointer for it in what I saw at training. So their game against Brisbane was not a shock, but as you said, now it's a matter of following that up, getting that consistency, meeting it with the challenge of being down a couple of players that were key players the week before, especially in the physicality of the way they took the game to Brisbane. And we can't lose track on that. The Eels were very, very physical in their approach with the Broncos. They will need to be physical in their approach with the Sharks because the Sharks have some very, very good forwards there. Look, I'm going to tip the Eels. I'm not sure if I'm as I was actually quite confident last week.
Yes, me too. Yeah, it had that feeling of an ambush.
Yeah.
But I think this one it's balanced on a knife's edge. I think it's going to be a cracking game. I'm going to tip our girls with the confidence that comes with a good win. But yeah, it's going to be a fierce contest. I could definitely see the Sharks prevailing here. I just hope it's going to live up to the billing. 2v3 on the ladder, a lot of talent across both rosters, and a chance for our girls to make a bit of a statement here and get consecutive victories. Yeah,
absolutely. So I'd say looking at a 4 to 6 point margin.
Single digit, tight one here, absolutely. Somewhere, I think probably the ceiling is like early 20 points for either side, maybe more likely to be in the teens. So really looking forward to this one. Make sure you catch it. Tasty will have plenty of coverage in the wake of it. Gin and Logic, as well as a preview too going up. So make sure you catch that one, and that brings us to our final game.
Oh, can I just say, man, when you look at that lineup, the clash of the fullbacks and the clash of the halves.
Yeah, it's superstar matchups here. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jada Taylor, breakout player last year. Emma Tonagato, one of the most well-credentialed players in this tournament alongside Taylor Preston, who's very, very good in her own right. You've got Abby Church, breakout star, starting to very slowly get her flowers. And then Rachel Pearson, representative star and on-field general, and then Cassie Toihiku, who both of you and I have. It's a heavy badge to give, but we think that she can be the best player in this competition.
She's potential. I think she could be a freak.
Yeah. You just watch her and the way she, the subtlety to the layers of her football and how she attacks the defense, you don't really see in many players, male, let alone female. She's a very natural footballer, and on top of that, she's a absolute monster in defense. So not too dissimilar to Dylan Brown in that regard, isn't it? It's funny how we ended up with not a like for like, but some pretty heavy similarities between the two 5'8s across the two premier codes here. So going to be keen to see her growth this year. Keen to see Abby continue to flourish at fullback, and I think those matchups in this game that's happening on Sunday, like I said, it's set up to be an absolute cracker of a game. two very good rosters, and a chance for the Eels to jump out to an early lead in this competition, make a serious statement about their intent, and maybe cause us to revise our early preseason predictions about, we think they're going to be finalists, but maybe something a little bit more.
Yeah, well, let's. I think this we might start to get a bit more of an idea with how they go against the Sharks in this one, because this is, as we said, this is a really knife's edge clash, and if the Eels pull off the victory, then I think we'll start to talk serious credentials.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we'll wait and see what the review and the debrief of that game brings us, which takes us to our final game, chronologically the second game of the weekend. Eels heading over to New Zealand to take on the Warriors at 16v12. Probably not the position either team thought they'd be in this late in the season, with both underperforming, but Warriors hosting Parramatta at Go Media Stadium. You can catch this one on KO and Foxtel. It's exclusive to those two platforms. Our cursed superpower 60s. It's in full effect this week. Couldn't be a Parramatta game without the opposition getting not one, but two superstars back, as the Warriors welcome back Shans Nickel-Clockstar and Sean Johnson from legitimately long-term layoffs. I think Shans has been about a month out and Sean Johnson's been well beyond that. So very untimely returns for the Parramatta Eels, very timely returns for the Warriors, which means
very Parramatta timings.
It is a dead set superpower, mate, like a cursed superpower. I know other teams and fan bases complain about, oh man, we've got players, returning against us. That's so unlucky. You look at our lineup this year on a week-to-week basis, and the players that have returned against us, it is someone's like made a wish on a monkey paw, and it's backfired massively. Whew. But yeah, the Warriors look like this. Shans Nickel-Clockstar, probably the closest thing you're going to get to an opposition Quinton Gufferson in the competition. He comes back to take on Guffo in the one. They've got Dallin Martins-Lesniak and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck on the wings. Two very talented flankers there. Ali Leataua and Moala Graham Talfa. There's a blast from the past, a player that spent a season with us in Jersey Flegg in the centres. Halves, Chanel Harris-Tavita and Sean Johnson. Adam Fanor-Blake, Mitchell Barnett, the props, Wade Egan, the dummy half. Murata Niokore, always going to have a place in our heart. Simba there, one of the tremendous Eels for a long time. On the edge with Kurt Capel on the other side, Dylan Walker lock forward. The Lussick Bowl, with the two Lussicks and the 14 Freddie for the Warriors. Tom Ale, Jazz Tavanga, and Leka Halasima round out their rotation. We got Sifakula, Tuapiki, Martin, Cozy, and Afoa part of their extended roster. Then on the other side for the Parramatta Eels, obviously already mentioned about Quinton Gufferson playing game 201 as an Eel. What about game 204, 205? How did he play for Manly? It was only a handful of games for Manly, so he's starting to build in that double ton there as an NRL player. You got Jake Tungor and Sean Russell on the wings, Will Penasini and Blaize Talagi in the centres. Be interesting to see how Blaize handles himself after making that big career decision, but hopefully he can have a good game for the Parramatta Eels. Dillbags is in the 6, Dejan Arce in the 7. Front row sees Reg and Woody as the bookends to Brendan Hands at dummy half. Sean Lane and Bryce Cartwright on the edges, Ryan Madison locking the scrum. Interchange, Lussick, Ofengahi, Moretti and Keir. So an unchanged team from the one that went down to the Storm, showing a bit of grit and gumption. The only cosmetic change being that Dan Keir gets a proper first 17 jersey to go into the pool room. So well done to Dan. Then you got Sanders, Arthur, Dury, Harper and Makatoa as the extended roster. Todd Smith, the man with the main man with the whistle there. And then you got Grant Atkins in the box. I got to say, I know you've chastised me for this in the past. I don't mind a Todd Smith ref game when I'm watching it from a neutral perspective. I don't think our record under him is that flash, but I feel like he's one of the better referees in the competition. Please don't let me down, Todd. Just call a good game on the weekend, please, mate. But
I think any record is more symptomatic of how we've performed in the last two seasons.
But I do feel like Todd is one of the better referees in the game, and I hope that he doesn't get warped by the system too much. But yeah, 6 o'clock p.m. kickoff this one, mate. So it's the pub slot on Friday night. If you're working your 9 to 6, you're going to be struggling to make it, and that might not be a bad thing the way Parramatta are playing this season. But how do you see this one? You got to think on surface level, even considering the effort last week, even considering that the Warriors have underperformed this season, they're pretty firm favourites coming into this one. I think the betting line reflects at $1.22 versus $4.30 at the sports bet line right there.
Well, John, first of all, I have a criticism for you because you come up with some of the best titles for the Team List Tuesday, and you just used a title that would have been ideal for this week, the Lussick Bowl edition.
Yeah, I know.
You missed.
Yeah.
You just missed a little bit there, mate. It's what a classic title that could be. Do you want to go in there and make a late edit to it?
Yeah, well, no, you can't do that. You got to wear those bruises as badges sometimes, and the shots you miss help you make the shots later down the road. So yeah, I definitely got that one wrong.
Look, in this, I think it's actually pointless in looking at the lineups, the respective lineups, doing any matchups, anything like that, because as far as I'm concerned, how the Eels will perform is entirely between the ears this week. And here's the reason why. Last week, we saw them give close to a 10 out of 10 performance in terms of effort. And we said that their execution was way down on that. I gave it a rating of 5 out of 10 in terms of execution. Now, the factor last week, firmly in my mind, the factor was Gutho was playing his 200th game for the Eels. It was a milestone game. I believe the players' heads were in the game for their captain. And now what we face is a week without a milestone. We have a plane trip over to Auckland. We have the Eels still with their issues around personnel and trying to field a fit and healthy team. This season is stretching on forever for them. And it is because, it's a long time now since the club parted ways with BA. As soon as you part ways with the coach midway through the season, you know what's going to happen. I haven't backed away from that. It's a very long lead in going to the end of the year. The players I have no doubt that they are just in the countdown mode.
Yeah, no
to
doubt.
the season. That they were able to find motivation last week. I'm not sure how much motivation they can find this week. I really can't see it. I mean, you expect that they will have pride in their performance. You expect that they will have pride in the jersey. You expect that they will be fighting with everything that they can to get a victory. But it's human nature, mate. This, as I said, this is a long time to have been completely out of finals contention with very little in the way of incentive as far as the premiership standings is concerned. They now sit way below everyone else alongside the West Tigers at the bottom of the ladder. The end of the year can't come quick enough. It's if they can find the same level of effort as last week, then it will be a competitive game because they just competed with the Storm, and with a bit of luck or a couple of less errors, they go damn close to winning because it was 5-3, gifting the Storm 2 tries against the run of play, gifting them. All right. So what's the alternative? If they don't play with that same level of effort, it gets ugly. So there's the two ways I say. I'm not, as I said, I don't think there is any point in looking at individual matchups. We know the Warriors are stronger this week. We know they're playing in front of a full house. We know that they are desperate to get a win to stay, to keep their faint finals hopes alive. So they've got everything to play for. the Eels have very little to play for this week. If the two mindsets are exactly that, one in desperation mode in front of a baying full house, the other hopping on a plane, can't wait for the season to be over, no one in particular to play for except for, those things that I said. I don't know, mate. I just don't know. I think this is probably we've been worried. We were wrong. We were worried that maybe that Titans game was the one that really got away from them. It didn't. The players showed they cared. Last week they showed they cared, and I suspect particularly cared about their captain. If we care this week, then maybe it's a contest. Tough to see us win, but maybe it's a contest. If their mindset is not what it should be, we could be talking 50 points.
Yeah, grim listening, but I think it's not unfair. Eels needing to bring the same amount of fire and effort from the Melbourne Storm game, while also much better application of said effort, as well as just play selection inside the red zone if they want to be competitive on a tough.
Can I throw
a
a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
Do you think the players will be impacted by the decision of Blaize?
That's an interesting one. I want to say probably not on the field. I think it's a bit of a gut blow off the field. I think there's like some strong rapports that have been built there this year. I think there was a lot of hope being pinned on him to be one of the real, banner bearers for the club from both the playing group and off the field. If his superstar sort of potential. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt us too much this week, but I could imagine that there would be players not upset at Blaize for making a career decision the way he did to go to Penrith, but upset at the process perhaps. So, yeah, I could see this being a setback, big picture, not just for obviously losing Blaize from a player talent perspective, but, yeah, the morale, the culture, it certainly would have been a setback.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So yeah, what do you see happening, mate? Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you
doom and gloom that I just.
No, I think you're pretty much summed it up. I think it's a really difficult assignment for the Parramatta Eels this week. The emotional highs last week of Guffo's 200th and the fact that the boys had a real dig and ended up still hurting themselves is probably going to lead to a bit of a ebb from the flow of that last game. So in the, I suppose we can sort of dovetail, segue into the predictions from this, because I think in a fit of cosmic irony and some dark humour from the footy gods, this feels like a game where Blaize Talagi gets the first try scorer. I can just see that happening, and just me having a dark cackle at the how messed up the universe is for the Parramatta Eels. I can see, Blaize first try scorer, maybe an outright first try scorer, not just Parramatta first try scorer, but the Eels going down by double digits in this one. I think the Warriors are going to win and win pretty comfortably.
I'll tell you what I fear is that there is no first try scorer.
Oh, don't say that. That's.
I just don't know. I mean, look, when the Warriors are playing at their best, they can be a tough team to score against. If we're off our game, I think we'll be really off it. But okay, let's go with the efforts there, and they are playing for all the things that they should be playing for, and we get a similar effort level to last week. I did tip Jake Tungor.
You got that one right.
To the first try scorer last week. I'll go with Dylan Brown in this one. He was, he is a lot of people are critical of Dylan and saying that he just doesn't produce for us like he should. his effort areas are off the scale. I'm telling you right now, they are off the scale.
Yeah.
He, I think people are expecting line breaks or putting players through gaps left, right, and
And
centre.
it's funny, we got that. We had a nice line break against Melbourne. We saw him save 2 tries from the other side of the field. Like I think Dylan's efforts are. Sometimes he has a game where it's like, okay, that's clearly an 8, 9 out of 10. He just dominated. But his efforts are often better reflected when you watch the game a second time, and you go out there and see the stuff that he's doing to help other players defensively. And he's not going to be a Mitchell Moses organising half, and that's why he flourishes much better if Mitchell Moses at the helm. Not to say you can't criticise Dylan's efforts sometimes, but I think he cops a lot of unnecessary criticism, reflective of what he's doing on both sides of the ball.
Look, we know if he doesn't get that suspension last year, the Eels probably sneak into the finals last year. Mm-hmm. It's even with all the other injuries and suspensions. If he doesn't have that time out of the game due to the misdemeanor that he came up with, the Eels play finals football. And, who knows? But I mean, we look at last year as a demise year, but compared to this year, last year was a raging success. Like that's the horrible thing is that the Eels, had circumstances of injury and suspension, and an awful draw, which I think played as much of a role as anything else. And they were unlucky not to play finals football, given what happened. And when you think in the context of, the players that were lost, it was remarkable for them to finish as close to the finals as they did. What was it? 2 points out of where the finals would have been.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So last year was a raging success in comparison. So anyway, I don't think there's anything more we need to add. I think we've. The only thing we haven't said is our prediction of who will be the best player on field. I'll just go Gutherson.
Yeah, well, again, it's a bit of a cheat code, isn't it? So I'll look beyond Gutherson. I'll look beyond Dillbags. I'll go for a player that I thought showed a bit of spark last week across 2 different positions. I don't know if he's going to play the secondary position this week because I think it was unscripted, but I think Brendan Hands might be up for a decent game here. If we're going to have a bit of spark, maybe he'll be part of it.
Fingers crossed, mate. Well, this is a mammoth preview given the what we started with.
The big Talagi debrief at the start of it. Yeah.
So what have we hit, an hour and a half?
Hour 38, just about to cross.
If you've stuck with us till the end, our thanks to you. And, of course, our thanks to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Great sponsors of the Cumberland Throw, help us do what we do. And, of course, don't forget, look, it's tough times, but we will be back at Paraleagues, the home of the Eels, next week before the game against the Panthers. Not sure who our guest is going to be at this stage, but we've had some absolute cracking guests in the way of Eels legends in the past. And, it's a great opportunity for supporters to come in, not only listen to them tell great anecdotes about their career and the people they've been involved with, but to be then able to meet them, have a photo, get them to sign something, have a bit of a chat with them afterwards. These blokes are absolutely the best when it comes to interacting with supporters. I couldn't speak highly enough of them. We absolutely love them. It's an honour for us to talk to them. So do come in and see us next week in the Bistro at Parramatta Leagues Club before the game. We'll have the details out about the times and who the guests will be during next week. But John, as it's a preview, and as I always say, I've got to say it, Go you mighty Eels.